This is the demonstration video for the cheese biscuits. Cooking principles. Cooking principle number 1, the biscuit method of mixing. The biscuit method. Step 1, sift dry ingredients together. Step 2, cut in solid fat with a pastry blender. Step 3, add enough liquid ingredients to the dry ingredients to form a soft but not sticky dough. Step 4, knead the dough and develop gluten and create layers. Cooking principle number 2, a type of quick bread, quick to make due to the use of baking powder to leaven. Leavening agents are ingredients that cause our products to rise. Baking powder is the leavening agent most frequently used in flour mixtures. It is a commercially prepared leavening agent made from an acid and a salt form, soda, which is usually sodium bicarbonate, and starch, which is usually cornstarch. When mixed with a liquid, they create carbon dioxide gas, which will cause our muffins to rise. Baking soda will act as a leavening agent when it's combined with another acidic substance, such as buttermilk or sour cream, vinegar, or even cream retarder. When it's combined with one of these ingredients, it too will also produce carbon dioxide gas that will help raise our flour mixture. Cooking principle number 3, the consistency of the unbaked crust is a soft dough, 1 part liquid ingredients to 3 part dry ingredients. Nutrition. Simple carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are responsible for supplying the body with energy, sparring protein, and assisting the utilization of fats. Enriched flour has had the 3 B vitamins, thiamine, niacin, and riboflavin, and iron added to it. B vitamins help the body turn carbohydrates into energy, help with normal growth and development of the body, maintain good appetite and normal digestion, and is essential for the proper functioning of your nervous system. Iron. Iron is needed to help build hemoglobin in the red blood cells to help transport oxygen and carbon dioxide, preventing nutritional anemia. Cheese has calcium, protein, phosphorus, zinc, vitamin A, and vitamin B12. Calcium is responsible for forming strong bones and teeth and maintaining and repairing the skeleton, maintaining muscle, tone, normal heartbeat, and healthy nerve functions, and aiding normal blood clotting. Protein. It is essential for building muscle, repairing all types of body tissue, regulating body processes, forming antibodies to fight infection, and supplying your body with energy. Phosphorus. The main function of phosphorus is the formation of bones and teeth. It is also needed for the body to make protein for growth, maintenance, and the repair of cell and tissues. Zinc. Zinc is a nutrient found throughout your body. It helps your immune system and metabolism function. Zinc is also important in wound healing and your sense of taste and smell. Vitamin A is needed for normal growth and formations of bones and teeth, for maintaining normal vision, resisting infection by keeping your skin and lining layer of your body healthy. Vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 is an essential nutrient that's almost exclusively found in animal-sourced foods, such as fish, meat, dairy products, and eggs. Vitamin B12 keeps the healthy functionings of our brain and nervous system, helps form our red blood cells, helps form our genetic materials, both DNA and RNA, and helps balance our levels of homocysteine, which is an amino acid or a building block of protein in your body, in the blood. Ingredients: 375 milliliters all-purpose flour. Gluten is the protein found within flour that, when combined with a liquid, will form strong elastic strands. Heat from the oven will harden this protein, creating the structure of our biscuits. 15 milliliters of baking powder. Baking powder is a leavening agent that when combined with a liquid will help produce carbon dioxide gas, which is needed to help leaven our biscuits. 1 milliliter of salt. Salt enhances the natural flavors found within any recipe. Today it will make the cheese of our cheese biscuit stand out a little further. 80 milliliters of butter or margarine. This solid fat acts as a tenderizer, for it interferes with the development of gluten, keeping our biscuits soft in texture. It will also help melt, creating pockets for the steam to flow through, creating the flaky layers that is typical in anything using the biscuit method. 180 milliliters of grated cheddar cheese. Cheddar cheese will be the main flavor of our biscuits today. It will also help add moisture in between the biscuit layers. For extra cheesy flavor in the biscuits, use an extra sharp cheddar cheese, such as an aged cheddar, and make sure you grate it fresh off a block. 125 milliliters of milk. Milk serves two purposes. 1, it's the liquid needed to activate the baking powder, and 2, it is the liquid needed to activate gluten within the flour, creating our structure. The milk helps bring our dough together and then makes it so that we can knead it and form our soft biscuit layers. These are all the ingredients you need to make the cheese biscuits. Equipment. For this recipe, you will need measuring equipment, including dry measures, liquid measure, and small measures. Metal spatula. Metal spoon. Sieve. Metal pie plate. Large bowl. Pastry blender. Grater. Metal fork. Biscuit cutters or a glass. Rolling pin. Pastry mat. Cookie sheet. Oven mitts. Hot mat. Lifter. And finally, a cooling rack. Method. Bachette stands for the beginning steps that you need to do at the start of your lab. B stands for books and bags. They should be away either at the back of the classroom or under your table. A stands for apron, which you need to put on to help protect your clothing. S stands for sleeves. You need to roll them up past your elbows. H stands for long hair that touches the shoulders that needs to be tied back, or hats that need to be removed. C stands for chairs that should be tucked under your table and out of your way. H stands for hands that should be washed properly for 30 seconds using hot water and soap. E stands for equipment, which you should be getting out as quickly as possible without wasting time. And T stands for the towels that you need to pick up. You need at least 2 dishcloths and 2 tea towels. Step 1. Use oven racks numbers 2 and number 4. Preheat oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, 200 degrees Celsius. The oven temperature for baking biscuits is usually quite hot. This ensures the biscuits will rise quickly, forming layers, which are the characteristic of a good product. Step 2. Sift flour, measure, and sift again into a large bowl. Lightly stir in baking powder and salt. This is the first step of the biscuit method. Now we typically sift flour for 2 different reasons. 1, to remove any lumps that might be found due to moisture in the air. 2, to add in extra air to the product. Adding air allows us to create air pockets that will help the carbon dioxide push through as it makes our product rise in the oven. It is important to have lots of air within our flour. Make sure as you're remeasuring the flour, you gently handle it. You do not want to deflate the air that you just added into it. Also, make sure you save the flour that's left over in the pie plate. The reason is we are going to roll out our dough later on a pastry mat using a rolling pin. We want to make sure we have extra flour to dust these that is lump-free. Make sure you give your flour another sifting through the sieve. Again, we're trying to add in as much air as possible. Then gently add the baking powder and salt. You can give it a quick stir with either a fork or a metal spoon, but make sure to do it lightly and quickly, making sure our air still stays within our dry mixture. Step 3. Measure margarine using the water displacement method. Start by filling a liquid measure with cold water to 100 milliliters. Make sure it's cold water so we don't melt the margarine or butter. Then, using 2 spoons, gently take the margarine and butter and push it underneath the water line. We want to make sure the total volume is being measured. The water line will slowly raise up as the butter or margarine is being added. If you allow this to float on top, it will not be measuring properly. Keep adding margarine or butter until the water line slowly raises up to 180 milliliters. That means we have 100 milliliters cold water and 80 milliliters of margarine or butter. Do not worry if you accidentally overmeasure. The margarine or the butter will not mix with the water, so you can easily take some out until the water line is at the proper measurement. When you are done, take your hand and place it over the top of the liquid measure and drain out all the water. Remember, the butter and the margarine will not mix with the water and it will easily separate. Now you have the perfect amount of margarine or butter to add into our biscuit dough. Step 4. With a pastry blender or 2 knives, cut hard margarine into dry ingredients to the size of coarse crumbs or small green peas. This is the second step of the biscuit method. It's needed to form layers. The solid fat will melt between the flour layers and leave spaces between the layers. Cutting cold fat into the dry ingredients is known as cutting in. The pastry blender is the most efficient tool. However, 2 knives can be used, held in each hand, working in a crisscross motion. Sometimes cooks use the tips of their fingers. This method is not recommended for beginners since the warmth of your hand may soften the fat and produce sticky, overworked crumb mixture. If you do not have a pastry blender at your home, you could always use things like a potato masher or do what French chefs do, freeze your butter and grate it using a grater. Step 5. Add 150 milliliters, 225 milliliters for a group of 3 of the grated cheese and toss with a fork. Reserve the remaining cheese to garnish the tops of the biscuits. When grating your cheese, make sure you hold the grater on a cutting board so that way you do not slip it around, scratching up the counter. Hold the grater firmly in one hand. Pay attention to yourself. Make sure you're aware of where your fingers are and the grater. Go slow and continue to rotate the block, always having a nice sharp edge. Do not let it slowly grade into an angle because that can be dangerous. As you get down to the last little bit of cheese, the best piece of advice I can give you is to use a flat hand and slowly push it through. Go extra slow because speed will actually cause you to cut your hand, but pushing it through gently won't. Once all your cheese has been grated, slowly measure out what you need to go into the biscuit dough. The rest we'll save off to the side to garnish the top of the biscuits. Add it into the dry ingredients and give it a quick toss using a fork. Make sure you go quickly and lightly as we do not want to disrupt the air we put in earlier as we sifted our flour. Gradually, a little at a time, add milk to the flour mixture while tossing with a fork. Add enough milk to make a soft but not sticky dough. Some of the milk might not be used. Mix quickly and lightly until the mixture comes away from the sides of the bowl. Do not overmix, otherwise gluten will become tough and heavy and the product will have poor volume and texture. Less chance of overmixing if mixed with a fork. This is the third step of the biscuit method. When the flour fat mixture is ready, the measured milk can be added slowly, a little at a time. A fork is the best utensil for stirring since a lighter stroke is possible and overstirring is less likely. Usually about 30 strokes is required to thoroughly combine the ingredients. When the mixture is stiff with no traces of dry flour, only then it can be turned out to be needed. You will know when this is possible when the dough starts to come together in large clumps coming away from the sides of the bowl. Then you know you are ready. Step 7. Form the soft dough into a ball. Be gentle and slowly bring all the dough together into a ball. Remember, the warmth from your hands can melt our butter, and we need to preserve this to help create pockets when it's baking in the oven for carbon dioxide to push through. Step 8. Lightly flour the countertop/table. Knead the dough 10 times. To knead, fold the dough in half, press down with the palms of your hands, and make a quarter turn. Repeat 9 times. Kneading will mix ingredients, develop gluten, and add air. This is the 4th step of the biscuit method. Now, I prefer to use a pastry mat. First of all, it's easier to clean and it has a lovely grid on it to help you roll out your dough and keep everything very even. You still need to lightly flour it. We always say it should be a light dusting of snow, not mountain tops worth. The flour will accidentally be absorbed by your dough if you're not careful, and too much extra flour will make your biscuits dry. Then turn your dough out onto the lightly floured pastry mat. Now, kneading the dough is a very important step. It's very important that you don't overdo it and only do the 10 times as instructed. We want to make sure it will not be sticky as well, so keep adding flour if you find it's coating your hands. The kneading is only meant to flatten pieces of fat into flakes, not blend the fat completely with the flour. Kneading also helps activate the gluten in the flour, just enough to give biscuits enough strength to rise and expand, but not enough to make them firm and chewy like a yeast bread. Again, using too much flour might overwork the dough and make the biscuits too tough. Make sure that you are folding the dough in half, pushing down with the palm of your hands as if you're giving it CPR, and only turning it a quarter turn. The ball of dough will not be perfectly smooth at the end, but when you're ready to check it, you can lightly press it with your finger and your fingerprint should re-spring back. That shows you enough gluten has been added into the dough through kneading that you haven't overdone it. Step 9. Pat dough into a circle, 3/4 of an inch or 2 centimeters thick. Use a biscuit cutter or a large water glass to cut out 8 or 12 for a group of 3 biscuits. Now we're going to roll out our dough. Lightly use some of the pre-sifted flour to dust the top of your dough and coat the rolling pin as well. Now in the movies, we typically see rolling that looks like this, back and forth, when really what I want you to do is start in the middle of your dough and push outwards every single time and change directions. That is what real rolling looks like. So start in the middle, push out, start in the middle, push out, and again, every time change the directions. Also, if you want a circle, keep forming it into a circle in between your rolling. As you form your shape and keep rolling, it will stay your circular shape. Now, 3/4 of an inch or 2 centimeters thick is roughly an 8-inch or 20 cm circle. So using your pastry mat is a good way to help keep your thickness even. I can also tell because that measurement should be the same thickness as one of my fingers. So I always keep checking the dough to make sure I'm not rolling it out too thin. Too thin will affect the baking time, and then I might accidentally burn my biscuits. Now there's 2 different ways you can cut out your biscuits. You can use a water glass or you can use a biscuit cutter. I prefer a biscuit cutter just because I find the water glass often causes suction and the biscuit dough is really hard to get out. If a cutter is used, press down without twisting, as the biscuit will be more symmetrically shaped. If you twist the cutter, it will actually twist as it rises in the oven. So, lightly flour your biscuit cutter. I'm going to start by cutting a circle in the middle and then cutting 6 circles around the edge. I will form the last biscuits using the scrap dough. But know this, the scrap dough biscuit will actually be over-handled and have too much gluten developed into it because you will have to squish the scraps back together. So try to cut all your biscuits out in the first go. So this way I get out perfect 7, and if you notice the edges are a little rough or accidentally dented, you can always gently form them with your hands. Put them off to the side and let's gather all the scrap dough together. I like to use a biscuit cutter to press the scrap dough into the biscuit cutter. Now I have a little bit too extra. I might be able to make an extra biscuit out of it. Press it gently into the cutter. Make sure it's the same thickness and then release. And again, if you need to, you could always knead your dough back together as well. I can tell the dough is too thick, so I'm going to be able to form 2 different biscuits with the scraps. This dough will probably be the most gluten-y kind of dough because it has to get overhandled to bring it back together. So this biscuit will be tough and probably won't rise properly as well. But there we go, our extra biscuits made from our scrap dough. Step 10. Place biscuits on an ungreased cookie sheet. Garnish biscuits with the remaining cheese. Use a cookie sheet, not a jelly roll pan. Allows for more even heat circulation. Make sure you put the biscuits onto the cookie sheet, allowing 2 centimeters or 1 inch of space between them for heat circulation. When you place the biscuits too close together, the biscuits will have soft sides similar to a pan yeast roll, which is not actually the desired texture we want. We want crispy outsides and pillowy soft insides. The cookie sheet does not need to be greased. There is enough fat in the biscuit dough that these will easily slide off at the end of our baking. If this is available, choose always a shiny baking sheet. A well-seasoned dark and colored cookie sheet will actually absorb more heat and cause the biscuits to burn, but a shiny one is more desirable to help achieve that pale biscuit color that is more desired for this product. Then, with the remaining cheese, top the biscuits. Make sure you don't get cheese on the cookie sheet. It will just melt and burn on, making it harder to wash at the end. So if you notice any scraps of cheese have fallen off the tops, pull it off. Make sure you have a clean cookie sheet. And also, make sure the cheese has been equally distributed on the biscuits. Don't have one that has more than the others. Step 11. Bake for 15 minutes or until golden brown. Transfer biscuits to a cooling rack. If there are 2 cookie sheets in the oven, stagger the cookie sheets, one on the top left and the other on the bottom right, and switch halfway through the baking time. It allows for more even heat circulation. Now, baking temperatures are often quite short for biscuits. They usually rise quite quickly with that baking powder reaction and form their structure. We want to make sure the outsides are just hardened, but the insides are pillowy soft. When the biscuits are ready, we need to remove them quite quickly off the cookie sheet. They will continue to cook if you leave them on to cool, and the bottoms will be very burnt. So using a lifter, quickly transfer them to a cooling rack. Be careful not to burn your hands, and remember to always put a hot mat on the counter before you put that cookie sheet down. Also, use oven mitts. A hot cookie sheet looks the same as a cool cookie sheet. Allow the biscuits to cool, but they are best served when they are warm and fresh out of the oven. The yield for this recipe is 8 biscuits, 12 biscuits for the group of 3. Test for doneness. 1. Should be golden brown on bottom and edges. 2. Should double in height. Standards. 1. Texture is tender and flaky. Layers can be seen. This is because you cut the fat in small enough pieces and you kneaded the dough properly to create the layers. When the fat melted, it helped the baking powder reaction push its carbon dioxide through the biscuit quickly. 2. Double in height. You can tell from this unbaked biscuit and the final product that it has risen double its height. This shows you had lots of air pockets as well as small pieces of fat formed within the dough. That way, the baking powder reaction could quickly push through and rise the dough really quickly in the hot oven. 3. Symmetrical in shape and size. You use the same biscuit cutter to cut the dough, but also you use only the first rolling of dough to create your biscuits and not the gluten scraps of the dough. Remember, gluten scraps will form irregular shaped biscuits with a more crumbly texture. 4. Sides should be straight, not twisted. When you cut out the biscuit using the biscuit cutter, you gently press down and did not twist the biscuit cutter. When you twist the biscuit cutter, it will make the biscuits twist in the oven as they rise up, and they'll have irregular sides. 5. Should not be doughy. Should be cooked all the way through. Biscuits, if they're not made properly or heavy in gluten, will not push up properly and will have unbaked raw dough on the bottom whereas the top will be full of holes from the gluten stretching out. It is important that you did not overknead the biscuits in order to have a fully baked product. These are the 5 standards for the cheese biscuits. Let's take a look at my demonstration. Here you see all my biscuits are even and symmetrical in size, and they were able to cook properly. You can see that only the bottom edge is golden brown, but the rest of the biscuit's quite pale. You can see it's doubled in height and has lovely layers forming on the outside, and the sides are straight. You don't see a twist to the biscuit at all. Now, let's take a look at the inside of the biscuit so that you can see the layers and how it cooked. I'm going to use a bread knife to gently saw through, and inside you can see a very fluffy product that has risen quite well. You can even see all the layers throughout. It's important that you have it not raw on the bottom. Raw dough on the bottom indicates a tough, heavy biscuit that couldn't rise in the oven. So having it evenly baked and lots of layers is the most desirable product that we can get from our biscuits. Biscuits require a minimum of ingredients and demonstrate very well the cutting in of firm fat, as well as manipulation skills required for making similar products. Learning to make good biscuits is an important step to learning how to handle other stiff flour mixtures and learning more difficult techniques. I hope you enjoyed our demonstration today. Happy baking, and thanks for watching.